Hi there, Dr. Brian. 5 simple self-tests for you to determine if you're likely to get sick from an infection. Hey, Dr. Brian here, chiropractor, your hands-on super health coach. So if I told you that you could do 5 simple things at home that would help you understand your health risk or health status, would you be interested? They're all quite easy and they're quite logical. So what they're doing is we're tapping into the body's logic. So the first one would be waist circumference. So for men, if it's over 102 centimetres, that's around 40 inches, and for women 88, that's around 90. 88, that's around 35 inches, 34 inches. Those are, when you're above those measurements, they're quite well evidence-based as being associated with increased risk of comorbidities, so diabetes, blood pressure, the high blood fats, and these things, the medical fraternity tells us, are associated with increased risk of ill health. Now the current global infection of COVID-19, the people who are dying are almost without exception. I think you count the people on one hand who are exceptions to the rule, is they all have comorbidities, so they're all diabetic, they're all overweight, they're all unfit, they usually have a heart complaint, they had a flu jab last season. There's a number of things that they seem to have in common that the data is supporting. So a waist that's above average, which means you have increased body fat and you're quite likely what they call pre-diabetic, if you're not already type 2 diabetic, means that you have increased your risk. The next thing to look at is your sleep quality. So if you don't sleep well, if you take a while to get to sleep, if you wake during the night, if when you wake up you'd rather go back to sleep, you're already depleted. So you're running on empty, you're running on adrenaline all day to keep you going, and we know that when you're tired it suppresses immunity. So being well rested is a hallmark of adaptability and resilience. So sleep is super important. And the adage I go up with was an hour before midnight is worth 2 after. Now we've all played that game where you go to bed at 10 p.m. and you feel quite like getting up at 6 a.m. or 2200 to 0600, that's 8 hours, and that's a really good window of sleep time. Now you go to bed at midnight and get up at 8 a.m. and you feel pretty rotten. You go to bed at 2 a.m. and you get up at 10 a.m. Now you're feeling just rubbish all day. So you've still had 8 hours, but those extra hours of going to bed later after midnight really takes a dent in how you feel. So getting to bed before midnight really improves your outcomes. Pain levels. So if we know that you've got joint pain, that is going to create more strain and stress in your body. So it's also stressful having ongoing pain, and we know that stress diminishes immunity. And also gut tenderness. So if your gut is really tender to touch and it's sore, that indicates inflammation, and inflammation also is indicated and associated with reduced immunity. So we should need to check your pantry. You're probably eating foods that might be good in themselves, but they're not right for you, and you could also be eating foods that just are not right for anyone. If it's processed and came out of a packet, it's party food for occasional, it's not diet and sustenance food for every day. Balance. So if you closed your eyes with your feet fairly close together, would you stay balanced or would you feel very unsteady? That tells me that your nervous system is not really in touch with your body and space. You use more energy than you should to stand up and move, and Dr. Roger Sperry, the Nobel Peace Prize Nobel Science winner in the 80s, showed that the more distorted the body is, the more energy it wastes. And if you're wasting energy, you don't have it left over for immunity. Immunity is very energy intensive, so if you are compromised for energy, your body will prioritise it to moving, not to fighting an infection. That's why lying down really helps your resistance. And here's a really cute test, which you might need assistance with, but if you've got any sort of modern wristwatch that is a heart monitor, etc., you can use that. So what we do is we get you to lie down for 5 minutes and relax, and let that device monitor your heartbeat. You could take your pulse yourself for 10 seconds and multiply it by 6, and that will give you a minute, 60 beats a minute, whatever. And then I want you to stand up and immediately take your heart rate again. And if you're unfit or if your system's compromised, your heart rate will often race. So you go from 60 beats a minute to 100. And that would also tell me, from my experience in doing this regularly with exams with individuals, that your body is compromised and you are more likely to have a nervous system and a system that's compromised and will have trouble fighting a bug, especially if you're up and about a lot. So there's your 5 tests. So they're very logic-based, they're very physiology-based, and put together in a suite of tests, you've actually got a very good indication of your likelihood to survive without symptoms an infection. So you might get some mild symptoms and that's okay. You'll be better in a day. You'll take some vitamin C, do the things that we know are boosting of immunity. Take some zinc, vitamin D. There are various things. Quercetin is known to be good, particularly for viral infections. There's just so many things that are known to be beneficial, which you can add into your daily routine. We can make another talk about what to do for that. However, if you did this test and only one of them was outlandish, then it's quite likely that you are reasonably robust. But if you actually had a waist, if you're a bloke and you had a waist of 112, and your heart went from 60 or 70 to 95, you closed your eyes and you feel like you're going to fall over. You've actually got a pain in your gut when you push around, sort of around your belly button and down around your waistline or belt line. If that's all tender to touch, then that would also indicate there's inflammation. You may have a sore knee or a sore hip, and it's not just a knee or a hip, it's actually made worse by that inflammation from the gut pain. And you may note that you don't sleep particularly well, you don't get to bed early enough, you're always in bed after midnight, you wake up tired, which means you're kind of running on empty now, Jackson Brown style, so you really want to ensure that you're getting good rest. And so overall you're seeing that you may actually be a strikeout on all 5 points, in which case you've got quite a bit of work to do. And if you don't, whether it's COVID-19 or just a regular cold or any of the other things that can we can come into contact with and cause us some discomfort. So really worthwhile working on you first. You cannot and will not be able to get the appropriate response from an external medication if your internal system is so compromised that it can't manage itself. It won't be able, a vaccination will not be able to effectively trigger a mechanism in your system that you cannot effectively trigger with a wild infection just from catching the bug in the environment. So a healthy body doesn't get sick and a super healthy body thrives. That's our hands-on super health motto. We know that the healthy people don't get sick, they may just get a mild case of something, but they won't get sick, and the super healthy people always thrive. They're the people looking after the less fortunate people. Most of this is within your control. It's to do with lifestyle and choices on a daily basis. So take control of your life and live better, live super healthy. All the best.